Alrighty, so it's that time of the year where I'm going to rank all the coasters at Canada's Wonderland. I will be doing this for all the parks I go to. I will also have Craiga do something very similar as well for any of the parks he goes to. So it'll be like my list and then it'll be his list. But last year, I think I only ranked the top 5 coasters at Canada's Wonderland, and this year I'm going to rank them all. And let me tell you, my list has changed greatly, and I think a lot of you are going to be shocked. But again, I am very different from a coaster enthusiast. I like to call myself a theme park enthusiast. So my list is definitely going to trigger a few. But again, these are just my opinions. I'm just one basic YouTuber that is covering a park like Canada's Wonderland. So take what I say with a grain of salt. Don't get too offended. These are just my opinions. Feel free to drag me down below in the comment section or agree with me on certain things. Do whatever you want. It's okay. This is just my list of the top coasters at Canada's Wonderland. And let me tell you, the park is definitely improving, which is why some of my coasters are changing on this list today. Anyways, hope you enjoy, and we're going to start it off right away with the worst coaster at the park, in my opinion. Again, this is just my opinion, and I do know a lot of enthusiasts are going to disagree with me here. Some say this isn't as bad as people say it is, but in my opinion, it is absolutely terrible. It needs to go. It hurts my head, it hurts my ears, and I just feel uncomfortable. So coming in at number 17 is Flight Deck. So I know a lot of people, this is a very split subject. A lot of people don't like it, and a lot of people don't mind it, and some people actually enjoy it. And that's okay. But I'm here to tell you that on my list, I absolutely hate this thing. I do not wish to ride it. I have had the worst experiences on this coaster over the last 2 years. And it is definitely not something I enjoy riding, which is why it appears in our ride punishment challenges. For our ride challenges at Canada's Wonderland. Craiga and I absolutely hate this thing, and we will do anything to get each other on this as a punishment. And in fact, I think there's videos of me riding this and screaming like I'm dying on it. But coming in at number 16 is Time Warp. Again, a lot of you are going to be like, why? It's not that bad. Well, for me, it's terrible. It doesn't belong at a park like Canada's Wonderland. If this was at a fair or a smaller park like Michigan's Adventure, I can see it being a decent attraction. But for a park like Canada's Wonderland, it just doesn't fit. The lines are massive. We need people eaters, and we need coasters that actually are roller coasters, not like these plug-and-play coasters that Paramount loved to install during their time of owning Canada's Wonderland. So it's just not something I enjoy. There's a lot of headbanging on elements on this coaster. And again, this is another coaster where I didn't enjoy it. And Craiga has a famous tagline, "It feels like you're sitting on rocks in a blender." I don't know what that means, but to be honest, it probably does feel like that. I do come off pretty rattled, and in our ride punishments, we weren't even able to complete this. So it's that bad. In fact, Flight Deck and Time Warp, in my opinion, are pretty interchangeable in terms of which one's worse. So comment down below what you think. But coming in at number 15 is Wild Beast. Now, to be honest, there are some days where I would rank this as number 17. In fact, Craig and I had such a bad experience on this coaster last week that I almost went to the first aid building. At the first drop, we were sitting in the back, and we hit the bottom of the drop really weird. And I guess and I don't always like to blame the rides. This ride is safe, and Canada's Wonderland is one of the safest parks in the world. I will put my whole trust in that. Again, I trust Canada's Wonderland with my life. So I'm assuming I probably wasn't sitting fully properly. To be honest, I remember coming off that ride and something was wrong with my lower back and I didn't feel good. So I was really agitated, and it was definitely the worst ride in the park on that day. But there are days where I sit in the front and it's not that bad. It's still pretty rough and painful. It's definitely not up there. And Wonderland has retracked about 90% of this coaster now. So it doesn't make sense that it's this painful still after almost retracking 90% of it. I used to say Mindbuster is on the top of my list of coasters that need to be removed for future expansions, whether that be a water park or a coaster. But this is definitely on that list for me now. It definitely, like this, Time Warp and Flight Deck need to go. I'm literally clapping while I'm recording this video. If you could see me, I look like a loser. But yes, this is definitely super painful. It is super interchangeable with Flight Deck and Time Warp. It is nowhere near my favorites. In fact, this year I've noticed, and I've been filming and taking pictures every day, this is the least, has the least ridership in the park from what I can tell. There's never a line. And I have a feeling, because when this train pulls into the station, you can hear the guests, just like on Flight Deck, complaining about how painful it is. If you listen while you're riding Flight Deck or this, people are not happy when they're in the brake run waiting. They're very uncomfortable. So Wonderland, if you're watching, remove this, remove Flight Deck, keep Time Warp if you have to, but those two coasters need to go. But coming in at number 14 is the Bat. So this is something that is a little difficult for me because it is a flat ride coaster, what I like to call. It's not something that I would say needs to be removed. It's not something super uncomfortable, but I have had really bad ride experiences on it this season. I don't know if it's because I'm getting slightly older, not to trigger anyone with that phrasing, but going backwards through that vertical loop, I go between grayout and blackout now, and like my head doesn't feel right. Again, that has probably something to do with me getting older. I've heard as you get older, your ride tolerance does lower. Again, it's not on the top of my list. It's not a capacity eater. It's definitely very slow. They have a single rider line and then a line. It's pretty much impossible for enthusiasts to ride this from now on at Wonderland because it's the summer season and the park is busy. It's got a full queue. It's just not worth it, in my opinion. It's not something that, again, I need to see removed or needs to be removed, but it's definitely not that enjoyable. But coming in at number 13 is the kid-friendly Taxi Jam. I have nothing bad to say about this. It's a perfect fit for Canada's Wonderland, it's definitely super popular. It's always got a full queue, the kids section definitely needs more coasters, in my opinion. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if the next coaster coming to Canada's Wonderland is a kid-friendly coaster that has a very low height restriction. I think the kid park is in desperate need of another family kids attraction. Coming in at number 12 is Wonder Mountain's Guardian. So this one is very interesting. I'm going to be honest, when I sat down to make this video, I had full intentions of putting Wonder Mountain's Guardian at number 17. But after further review, I didn't think that was fair to it. I don't know what's wrong with the ride, so I can't rank a ride that has potential to be really awesome as a horrible attraction just due to some technical difficulties. So again, coming in at number 12 is Wonder Mountain's Guardian. It is super fun. The drop track is definitely one of its best elements. If the guns are working, the ride's not that bad. I wish there was more theming inside. When you're in there, looking at concrete below the screens and only seeing concrete and the station being kind of like half done, the queue line and station, it is one of the ugliest things I've ever seen in my life, that queue line. I wish they put more attention to detail. Again, my advice to the park would be shut this attraction down, spend a year rehauling it, fixing it, and just adding theming. Do what Knott's Berry Farm did to theirs. I love the theming on Knott's Berry Farm's version. Fix those guns, figure something out. I can tell there's no way this ride isn't fixable. So close it down for a year. It's a capacity nightmare anyways. Maybe redo the trains, add more like ability for guests, maybe add like a third cart. I don't know. That sounds a little unrealistic considering they'd have to redesign the station. But again, in my opinion, the station is horrible, ugly, and nothing about this ride makes sense other than the drop track and the guns if they work. I know that was really harsh, but I have been really why hasn't this been fixed? Kind of annoying. I don't know whose problem it is, but oh well. So coming in at number 11 is another family coaster. Some people might feel like I'm ranking this a little high, but again, you don't think you should underestimate the family attractions, especially at a park like Canada's Wonderland. So coming in at number 11 is Thunder Run. So Thunder Run is number 11. I think it's great. It's always got a full lineup. This thing is packed. People love it. I remember when it was shut down last season, people were really upset about not being able to ride it. It's super fun. It's got some nice theming inside. It goes inside the mountain, which is a really nice interaction. It's got 2 cycles, so it's a fairly long ride cycle. So I think it's just all around really great. I have nothing bad to say about it. I have nothing super awesome to say about it. I just think it's a great attraction, and I would call it a pretty good supporting lineup at Canada's Wonderland. I don't think this one will ever be removed. And to be honest, even though I don't really ride it, I would be upset if I were to ever see it removed. But coming in at number 10 is another family coaster. So we have Silver Streak. I brought that in at number 10 because it's comfortable. There is no headbanging. It's pretty fun for the families. It has another full line. And it does the park great. It looks really nice too. I know that they're just simple coasters, but it does look great where it is. And I do think it fits Wonderland really well. Maybe they could add a second train. I know that's not possible because the brake run isn't a block section. But I definitely think that ride should have been built with 2 trains. Coming in at number 9 is Dragonfire. So this is another coaster that I'm really confused by. It does not have a long lineup anymore. Over the last 2 years, this ride has had pretty low ridership in my opinion. And it is something that I could see definitely being removed if there were ever to be a mock double launch in Medfair. So I don't see it on the chopping block anytime soon because it's not totally uncomfortable. It's not unbearable, and it's not super thrilling. It doesn't have great capacity. So it's not something that I could see totally being removed. I think that it does Wonderland good still, and I have a feeling it's pretty low on maintenance costs. I can't see it being a problem for Wonderland, so it's probably pretty low in their radar in terms of attractions that are being looked at to be removed. So coming in at number 8 is Ghoster Coaster. So this is a pretty underrated ride at Wonderland. It is a kid family coaster, but it's super fun. I mean, even as an adult, I enjoy it. It's got some that drop is pretty steep. It's got some pretty good airtime, and it's just a good old classic wooden coaster. I definitely think it's a bit underrated. It's not things super thrilling, but it's not something that's super boring, and it's not painful like Wild Beast. So I definitely think it deserves to be where it is above Wild Beast, and I know a lot of people enjoy it. Comment down below so far if you are totally lost and disagreeing with my list, or if you're following along and kind of agree with how I'm ranking the ride so far. Definitely want to hear from you guys. I'm going to be reading all the comments. I'm super excited to be dragged. But coming in at number 7 is The Fly. So The Fly at Canada's Wonderland is definitely deserving of spot number 7. It's a super fun attraction. Those tight turns create that little thrilling sensation of being tossed out of your little cart. It's got a pretty big big drop. And it's just super fun. The only downside is if it's raining, the ride will not run. And this season so far, it does look like it has a lot of downtime. But nonetheless, it is a great attraction. It fits Wonderland really well. It is in Frontier Canada slightly, so I would love to see a retheme soon. Maybe switch it up to beavers, or I even heard like someone come up with this great idea of making it indoors, even though I think that would kind of ruin the area because that is one of the most beautiful parts of the park with the willow trees and theming it to the Northern Lights. But nonetheless, I do think it's great. It's not going to go anywhere, obviously, and it's a great attraction for Canada's Wonderland and the families and kids. Coming in at number 6 is Backlot Stunt Coaster. This is a coaster that I used to think was a really bad ride. But I've been riding it a lot this year, and when I ride rides, I like to pay attention to how the guests come off the ride and enjoy the ride. And I will tell you, if there are kids on that ride or young teenagers, they love the ride. They come off and you will constantly hear, "I want to re-ride. Can we please re-ride?" And I love hearing stuff like that, and that's how I like to build my lists again. So I definitely think this is a super popular attraction at Canada's Wonderland. People love it. It's got a really intense launch. That first helix is super intense. I always gray out. And the ride is just super fun. It does suck that Wonderland does not have the effects turned on. From what I understand and have heard from previous tours and stuff, is it's because they would require a pyrotechnic on site at all times. And the park doesn't want to pay to have that. And that kind of makes sense in their defense. Why have someone on site for just that one ride? You could just turn off the effects, and it also creates faster capacity. And from what I know, that ride has really great capacity. So yeah, that definitely is deserving of spot number 6. Coming in at number 5, this is where you guys are going to start to lose it with me, okay? Coming in at number 5 is Vortex. So Vortex at Canada's Wonderland is definitely an underrated attraction on the world scale. It is super fun. That first drop is really fun, the way it swings. And now with Yukon Striker, if you get a front row ride on this, you are swinging and dodging trees and Yukon supports and then dipping down really close to the water as you literally circle around Yukon's little tunnel. So a super neat attraction, definitely improved this season. I am finding a bump and slight discomfort in the ride this year. But again, it's not ruining it for me. It's just moving it down on my list. So if you've experienced any of these bumps and discomforts this season, comment down below because I'm very curious. I've been asking everyone that's ridden it this year so far. But coming in at number 4, oh boy, I'm going to need armor, is Behemoth. So I am not enjoying Behemoth this season whatsoever. And for those of you that remember my list last year, it was my number 1. I am not being biased. Anyone who knows me knows that I defended that ride last season with so much pride. I would get upset when people said they didn't like it and would trash on it. I would defend it. Anyone in my Discord server knows. So I promise you I'm not biased. I'm not being rude to Behemoth. I'm just not enjoying it this season. That one trim break, it really is ruining the ride. I'm hardly getting airtime. There are times where I do get trimless rides and the ride is amazing. But for the most part, that trim is ruining the ride. It is very bumpy. It's definitely got that B&M rattle building up. Yeah, so I would suggest sitting on the 2 seats that are literally touching. So the 2 touching seats on each cart. They're not a wheel seat, so it is less of a B&M rattle when you're sitting on those seats. But yeah, definitely a front row ride or back and sit on those 2 inner seats. But nothing too bad to say. It's still a great hyper. Anyone from the states that visits that I've hung out with this season loves it and has really nice things to say about it. And those are the people's opinions that you should take more seriously when it comes to a ride because they don't get to ride it all the time. So their opinions of the coaster aren't kind of swayed or biased in terms of getting bored of an attraction. But coming in at number 3 is Mindbuster. So a lot of you are probably really shook right now because last year I said that Mindbuster was one of my least favorite rides in the park. And I don't know what happened. They didn't retrack the ride hardly at all. There's just very small sections that they retracked. But I found sitting on a middle seat of each cart and in the very back provides a really unique ride experience. And if you ride this thing in the rain, it gets even better. Or a night ride. I love this ride. I know Craigo loves this ride. We are having really good experiences on Mindbuster this season. The crew are amazing. Again, some of the best experiences I've had at the park are from Mindbuster and Yukon Striker. So just a huge shout out to Mindbuster's crew because you guys are awesome and your guest interaction has been amazing. So it's definitely a great ride all around, and I'm kind of shook that it is providing such great rides this season. It hauls. Like the minute you drop, you're flying. Like I don't even I can't think of a moment where this thing isn't hauling on the ride, especially when you do come into that helix before the brake run. It feels like you're just gonna derail off the track. It's quite scary, but that's what wooden coasters are meant to feel like. It is 100% safe. And yeah, just a super awesome ride experience. But coming in at number 2. It doesn't make sense because this should be Amusement Insider's coaster, but it's Yukon Striker. So Yukon Striker is definitely an amazing ride. It is one of my favorites at the park. I definitely have a huge bias for it, and that's why I felt like I need to rank it at number 2. Because me before the season started probably would have had it at number 1, but Leviathan is just killing it this season, and Yukon Striker is too, but it definitely is just lacking that speed. And if you've been on a dive coaster, you've done about 80% of Yukon Striker. There's just a few unique elements to it for a dive coaster, so it's nothing too special, but it's definitely a lot better a ride experience than a lot of people gave it credit for or are giving credit to Yukon Striker still. So definitely make it out to the park and check it out. But that means coming in at number 1. Coming in at number 1 is Leviathan. Leviathan this season, I don't know what it is. It is hauling. It is super fun. That little speed hill is just amazing. I am loving the ride experience so much. You have to get to the park if you haven't and get on Leviathan, a very front row ride. You will come off that thing crying. It is just so fun. I love it. Definitely helps that from what we understand, the park added 600 pounds to the front of all the trains to help it get it through its course. Wonderland is really famous for running their rides in extreme weather. As long as there's not thunder or lightning, they will run their rides in pretty high winds and rain, which a lot of people really enjoy, because if you go to a park, a lot of you don't have the luxury to just be like, oh, I'll come back, in a couple days. Some of you literally drove out of your way to get here, and having that little kind of extra trust in the park that they're gonna have the rides open even if it's raining is just pretty relaxing. And I have to give it to Wonderland. They definitely are one of those parks that you can go to, and if it's raining, you're gonna get on the rides that you want to get on. But nonetheless, hope you enjoyed this top 17 list at Canada's Wonderland for my coasters. I know some of you might be triggered. It's okay. Drag me down below. I'm ready for it. I know my list is weird. I know I have weird opinions, but that's what makes my channel and myself unique, and I ain't gonna change it. So deal with it. So hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and share this video for others to enjoy. Hopefully you have an amazing long weekend for those of you in Canada, and hopefully you have an amazing weekend for those of you that aren't in Canada. Happy Canada Day, everyone. Bye.